supreme power. The venomous serpent of the inner court had completely walked into the cage. William's iron trap was ready to snap down with the most brutal force to strip away everything she craved. The moment Camilla's fingers tightened around the heavy gold block of the royal seal, the sharp click of a light pulled down, and the person stepping out of the bed was not the frail elderly king. It was Prince William. He stood tall and commanding in full military uniform, his gaze fixed on Camilla, which shattered the quiet space. The entire system of high-power chandeliers inside the office burst into brilliant light, the cold white illumination instantly exposing the covert actions of the Supreme Queen right at the crime scene. Panic-stricken, her face losing all color, Camilla whipped around toward the sickbed in the corner, where she thought King Charles lay comatose under the influence of the blackmail letters. But the thick velvet blanket was pulled, carriages rolled down the mall, intricate pure white lace wedding dresses, and the radiant smile of the bride, Harriet, dominated the front pages of every fashion magazine and high society news outlet. Audiences everywhere rapturously followed every noble gesture and contented look of the family members, believing that the exiled to the remote Scottish Highlands. What will William's young generation alliance do to deal with the next retaliatory wrath from overseas? London was submerged in a sea of vibrant flowers and continuous cheers from the public. The royal wedding between Peter Phillips and Harriet Sperling was hailed by major TV channels from the UK to the US as the most romantic event of the decade, a symbol of unity and prosperity for the House of Windsor. Gilgular countertrap right by his father's sickbed. Will King Charles survive the shock of this despicable betrayal by his wedded wife after Camilla was stripped of her crown and permanently opened the safe containing private documents? Camilla pulled out old letters bearing the handwriting and private communication codes between Charles and Harry. Then, using a secret courier channel through a loyal gardener who had worked for her family for decades, Camilla sent a secret dispatch to Harry in California. She not only intended destruction to tear down William's apparatus, leaving no trace on conventional communication systems, Camilla covertly carried out her despicable act. Late one evening, taking advantage of the guard shift change, she slipped into the king's private office using a master key stolen from his coat pocket as a media card to force the royal family to provide financial support and protection. Camilla immediately realized this was a gift from fate, a ruthless plan formed in the mind of the silver-haired queen. She would turn Harry's appearance into a weapon of mass, but he could not reach across the ocean to the other side of the world, where Prince Harry resided in California. Right at this moment, leaks from the US indicated that Harry was planning a massive scheme to bring his children back to the UK in July to promote the Invictus Games. Harry wanted to use this trip cold and sharp as two daggers. Completely contrary to the collapsed, exhausted appearance Camilla had been longing for, William stood as a cold-blooded judge, a master detective who had fully resolved the darkest case in the monarchy, cracking with horror as she realized the true identity of her adversary. Harriet Sperling, the newlywed granddaughter-in-law, whom Camilla had always trusted, believing she could easily use her superior status to manipulate her into acting as an informant to spy on monarchy. He took slow, deliberate steps toward the desk, each stride dealing a heavy blow to his stepmother's panicking psyche. Before Camilla could utter a single plea of innocence, Harriet Sperling stepped out from the shadows of the dark velvet curtains. In her hands was a specialized video camera from the military security forces, its lens pointed straight at Camilla's pale face and trembling hands, tightly clutching the golden seal and the forged commitment paper. Simultaneously, Peter Phillips and Prince James entered through the main door, locking down the Queen's only escape route. Camilla looked at Harriet, then at William, her lips twitching, her voice. One night in mid-May, when all of Clarence House had drifted to sleep, William quietly stepped into his father's office. In his hands were not stacks of files, but a hand he had just endured a horrific nightmare. Additionally, reliable sources from private airports around London reported back that special transport flights from the U.S. were carrying covert cargo heading toward the palace. William did not bother calling any formal meetings to discuss the matter. He knew that in this palace, even walls had ears. Handheld military wave scanner, a high-tech intelligence device capable of detecting microscopic radio frequencies. He moved the device slowly, scanning every corner of the room, from ancient family paintings to the crevices of the sofa. As the scanner drew near the king's desk, the screen immediately flashed a red light. Every afternoon, after Queen Camilla entered the room to visit and keep the king company, his heart rate readings would spike to dangerous levels. The king's complexion after those meetings did not improve. On the contrary, his eyes were bloodshot, his lips trembled, and his hands gripped the bedsheets as if he was 26. The heat of the London summer was not just sweltering on the streets, but seemed to have condensed into an invisible mass of pressure, weighing heavily on every corner inside Clarence House. According to the information Queen Camilla received from the forged secret letters, strength to resist. She was convinced that the psychological poison from California had seeped deep into her husband's bones, and that this monarchy was about to change hands under her own arrangement. To allow the venomous serpent to reveal herself completely and play her final card, Prince William decided to spring the decisive takedown trap. On the night of July 25th, tomorrow, would be the moment Prince Harry unilaterally detonated the media bomb in the U.S., publicizing his children's return to force the king to concede. Camilla smugly observed King Charles over the past few days, lying motionless on his sickbed, his breath raspy through an oxygen mask, completely devoid of any, was continuously transmitting signals back to William's computer screen, pinpointing the treacherous woman's exact location second by second. Time flew rapidly toward the final days of July 20. Inner circle. Camilla had fully trusted Harriet personally, handing her multiple secret dispatches to send to the U.S., entirely unaware that her every move was being reported directly to William. Harriet raised her tablet, playing a crystal-clear video for everyone to see. On the screen, images of Camilla covertly opening the safe, personally slipping Harry's blackmail letters into the king's morning reading files, and even the audio recording of her voice colluding with the gardener to swap Charles's tonic bottles with medication that increased his heart. On the younger generation was in fact a double agent embedded by William at her side over a year ago. The lavish wedding between Peter and Harriet in early June was actually a stroke of chess genius by William. It simultaneously created a perfect media cover to distract Camilla and legally placed Harriet deep within the Queen's rate were all vividly displayed. The entire media weapon from California that Camilla had long taken pride in had in truth been reduced to a pile of harmless scrap paper by William's, subjected to 24/7 surveillance by armed guards appointed directly by William. Camilla was stripped of all privileges, no phone, no internet, and no contact whatsoever with the outside world, including Harry in California. She would spend the remaining days to seek defense, but all she received were ice-cold glares and the contemptuous turned backs of the youth. William's alliance stood tall like a fortress wall, completely sweeping the remnants of the greedy woman out of the core of power. The punitive order was permitted near the scene. She was permanently exiled to an isolated, heavily fortified estate deep within the remote and freezing Highlands of Scotland. This estate was enclosed by dense security fencing and subdued swiftly and with absolute secrecy that very morning. Camilla was escorted by 2 loyal guards into a closed black vehicle with tinted windows. No reporters or correspondents were. Moonlight filtering through the large glass windows, casting long, distorted shadows onto the cold marble floor. William wanted to give Camilla an absolute sense of security. A single opportunity to strike and seize the supreme object of power before everything concluded the next morning. Camilla sat in her private, calculated move to create a fatal opening. The entire long, winding corridor plunged into an eerie silence. The wall lamps were dimmed, leaving only the faint room, her eyes glued to her phone screen. To monitor the signals from the eavesdropping system she believed she still controlled. Seeing the corridor completely empty and the space around the king's room echoing only with the steady hum of medical machinery, the woman's greed completely overrode her reason. She stood up, donning a long... He ordered Peter Phillips to secretly withdraw the entire Royal Guard force from the corridor leading to King Charles's office and bedroom. This was a risky but tactically public duties succeeded. She would be turned into an invisible shadow, nothing more than a Gando Guido once King Charles passed away. She was not content to surrender the supreme. William had officially erected a living shield, ready to declare war on anyone who dared block his path to saving his father. From the shadows of the long winding corridors of Clarence House, Queen Camilla had witnessed the powerful rise of her stepson. She saw Peter and Harriet's cars entering and leaving the palace with increasing frequency, and saw the keys to secret rooms gradually being handed over to the young people under William's command. The greed and pride of a woman who had spent her entire life climbing to the position of the nation's matriarch would not allow her to sit idly by and be bound. Camilla knew that if William's plan to transfer commanding authority and the luxurious privileges she possessed within this palace. Camilla's malice surfaced when she recognized William's fatal weakness. He could control people in the UK.
Well, it's very rare when we get an update on the King's health, and royal watchers have really jumped on this latest snippet from His Majesty himself.
The British monarchy has officially plunged into absolute chaos as King Charles lies exhausted on his sickbed. Under the ruthless precedent has just been exposed. Prince William launched a razor-sharp ambush, catching his stepmother red-handed, as she covertly aided secret dispatches filled with blackmailing words sent back from Harry in California. Camilla turned these letters into an insidious psychological weapon aimed at collapsing the king's fracture of the summer 2026 weather. A bloodless but cold-blooded purge took place overnight, shocking the world, as Queen Camilla was abruptly stripped of all privileges and immediately expelled from the palace. The horrifying truth behind the fragile heart in a conspiracy to seize the supreme golden seal. However, William was one step ahead by freezing all flight paths, confiscating the toxic stack of letters, and setting a spectacular watching those glowing lines, his chest heaving with rage. Camilla had colluded with an external force using the rebellious son to execute a psychological assassination against his father. Harriet looked up at William, her voice a sharp whisper. If these reach the king right now, his heart will stop instantly. This is a meticulously planned murder. William said nothing. He snatched a letter, a ruthless gleam in his eyes. He decided not to just block them, but to turn these very letters into a spectacular countertrap. Instead of destroying the mail, William ordered a handwriting forgery expert within his team to conduct a large and began opening each envelope. Under the intense purple fluorescent light, lines of handwriting in special ink gradually emerged between the ordinary text lines on the dispatches from California. These were the darkest, most provocative words. Harry announced the exact date and time he would land with American reporters, accompanied by ultimatums demanding his share of Charles's personal inheritance, threatening to expose all family secrets on television otherwise. William's nothing but a pathetic puppet in her stepson's perfect counterplot scenario. There was no leniency, no prolonged discussions, and absolutely no handshakes of reconciliation or press releases to appease public opinion. This war had to end with a brutal purge, a long antique oak table, every face bearing an expression of cold resolve toward the traitor. Queen Camilla stood in the middle of the room with no chair provided for her. Psychological punishment that forced the perpetrator to pay the heaviest price in both honor and personal freedom. The core members of the House of Windsor sat along the long filter from the very beginning. The Queen's smugness collapsed completely in an instant. She stood frozen, her aging face etched with ultimate humiliation and disgrace, knowing she was but young, loyal, and ambitious faces within the family. Peter Phillips walked in wearing a suit still smelling of wedding flowers, followed by Harriet Spurling, his newlywed wife with the sharp eyes of someone who understands the ways of the world, and Prince James, the young Duke of Wessex, who possessed the cold head of the Windsor lineage. If the king continued to appear in public and shoulder heavy duties in these final weeks of the month, his heart would collapse before autumn could arrive. William's gaze shifted to his father's empty desk, where the golden royal seal, the object representing supreme commanding authority, lay silently in a red velvet box. He clenched his fist as a cold, decisive resolution formed in the mind of the future king to protect his father's life. Without bothering to notify the courtiers of the Queen's old faction, William proactively summoned a closed-door meeting right on the ground floor of Clarence House. The guests were not aging officials. Camilla's ultimate objective on this fateful night was not just to witness the downfall of her wedded husband, but to seize the golden royal seal along with a forged commitment letter she had personally drafted beforehand. This regent, Camilla's thin, age-spotted hand trembled with excitement as she saw the golden seal gleaming under the moonlight. She reached out her dark red-painted fingernails, preparing to touch the object that represented a black silk robe, her silver hair draped over her shoulders to create a haunting image in the dark night. Camilla stepped out of her room, her movements as light as a wild cat, making absolutely no sound on the thick velvet carpet. She headed straight toward King Charles's office, where an antique safe stood slightly ajar, exactly as William had subtly arranged. This document clearly stated that in the event of King Charles's cognitive incapacitation, Queen Camilla would be the sole individual holding control over all personal assets and issuing the supreme commands of the family, completely bypassing William's practical role as diamond tiara crashed to the marble floor, rolling around like a cheap toy before the eyes of everyone present. William looked at Camilla, his voice ringing out decisive and ruthless like an irreversible life sentence. "You have betrayed my father, and you have betrayed this." Gleaming royal insignia on her bodice, symbols of the nobility she had spent her entire life using every dirty scheme to achieve. Without a single word of warning, William reached out and forcefully ripped the insignia and the tiara right off Camilla. The sound of tearing fabric and clashing metal echoed sharply. The house with the lowest schemes for personal gain. From this moment on, you no longer hold the status of Queen of England. Your name will be erased from all family activities, and you will leave this palace immediately. Camilla shrieked in despair, turning to Peter Phillips and James, surrounded and cornered by the younger generation alliance. Prince William stepped up to his stepmother, hands crossed behind his back, his eyes filled with utter disdain. He looked directly at the small diamond tiara pinned to her hair and the signaling an unfamiliar transmission source. William narrowed his eyes. Using his gloved fingers, he gently lifted an antique brass inkwell, a family heirloom that had sat on King Charles's desk for decades. Turning the inkwell upside down, his eyes flared with a fire of fury upon seeing a miniature eavesdropping. The traitor was not far away. It was the very woman who daily feigned concern for his father's health. Camilla had established a spy line right inside the king's bedroom to control every breath of the monarchy. Device no larger than a pea, glued tightly to the bottom with a layer of specialized black adhesive. This device was silently transmitting the entirety of the King and William's conversations back to Camilla's private room. Without a moment's delay, William immediately activated his Shadow Alliance. He did not notify the regular security forces because he knew that once this information leaked, the British monarchy would crumble before public opinion. In a secret room in the basement of Kensington Palace, William stood facing Peter Phillips and Prince James. They acted like real intelligence agents, silently shadowing every footstep and every glance of that greedy woman, while Camilla remained completely oblivious and smug, believing her plot was unfolding perfectly, entirely unaware that William's trap was tightening around her. His fist, the ultimate outrage of an elder brother in the clan, flashing in his eyes at their stepmother's despicable behavior. James, with the agility of youth, immediately proposed a plan. They divided duties. The faces of the three young men showed absolute resolve under the dim lighting. William tossed the wiretap onto the table, his voice cold as ice. "She has crossed the red line. From this moment on, we hunt." Peter Phillips clenched to establish an invisible cordon around Camilla. James was responsible for monitoring all entrances and exits to the Queen's private quarters, logging every servant who entered or left. Peter used tracking devices to monitor vehicles belonging to those suspected of being Camilla's lackeys. Protocols. The king's steps grew heavier. His pale complexion and short breath after each ceremony made those closest to him shudder with fear. The elderly monarch was forcing himself to battle a severe illness, while the highest seat of monarchy was entering a golden, peaceful, and blissfully happy era. But behind the thick stone walls of Clarence House, reality painted a starkly contrasting picture, grim and reeking of mortality. The brilliant aura on the front pages was in fact nothing but a perfect cover. A splendid velvet curtain drawn to conceal an internal crisis at red alert level. King Charles's health was deteriorating rapidly under the ruthless pressure of the sweltering summer weather, and hours of lengthy diplomatic power in the realm shook violently with every weak beat of his heart. Prince William stood by the window of his office at Clarence House, staring intently at the sun-drenched garden, but his mind was at the end of the hallway in his father's sick room. He knew all too well that time was running out of London and headed straight for the palace. According to Camilla's plan, a burlap sack of mail containing Harry's secret dispatches would be delivered directly to the logistics area via an underground passage meant for the kitchen. However, the moment the vehicle passed the side gate, it was intercepted by two matte black cars with their lights turned off. Kensington Palace, where Prince William and Harriet Spurling were waiting. The basement held no luxurious furniture, only a large metal table and high-power ultraviolet lamps. Harriet, with the meticulousness of a clever woman, donned rubber gloves. The hunt entered a breathless stage when William decided to sever Camilla's information supply line. On the night of July 18th, a small mail truck took off from a private airport on the outskirts. Peter Phillips and James stepped out of the darkness. Without saying a word, they directly confiscated the entire sack of mail before the silent gaze of Camilla's loyal driver. The entire haul of mail was taken straight to the dark basement of Charles was an emotionally fragile man, constantly tormented by guilt toward his youngest son, and yearning for a complete family reunion before closing his eyes. The letters from Harry contained heavy accusations and harsh demands regarding privileges combined with promises to bring his grandchildren to see him if his demands were met. These were no ordinary letters. They were psychological poisons, ingeniously calculated and prepared by Camilla. Camilla's goal was thoroughly clear and ruthless. She wanted to ignite a media conflict right at her husband's